Good afternoon. It is the 24th of March 2021. This video is going to be on transitioning from college to law enforcement, specifically federal law enforcement, but I'm also going to talk about the state and local law enforcement opportunities that are available also. And just to preface this, I mean, at this time, I would think more than any time that I know of, certainly more than when I joined law enforcement, which was 1984. The vacancies are many, and the applicants, specifically in state and law enforcement, are relatively few, and qualified applicants are relatively few. Okay, so that's a good thing. Now, back when I went in, the vacancies were few, and the number of applicants wanting the jobs were many. So, if you do have a college degree, or even if you just have some college, your opportunity, the ability to get into, first of all, state and local law enforcement is very good. Now, of course, here's the downside of it. Right now, state and local law enforcement, particularly in major cities, if you've been paying any attention to what's going on in the news or anything like that, you're going to know that they're much maligned. A lot of people do not like law enforcement. A lot of veteran law enforcement officers are leaving. There's a lot of crises with the police themselves. I hate to say it, this is very sad. The suicide rate among police officers has gone up. Those seeking early retirement or medical disability has gone up. Those in major cities just simply picking up their stuff and going to a smaller community has gone up. So major cities, even though they may have defunded the police, probably have a lot of vacancies. And if you have a clean record and you're an intelligent person, you've stayed away from drugs, you shouldn't have any problem getting hired. Okay. So as a college student, let's say you are, a sophomore, junior, senior in college, undergraduate, you're going to be graduating college. Again, state and local law enforcement is wide open right now. Major cities, they should be more than happy to hire you. The standards are probably not anywhere near as stringent as they were 20 years ago. And by stringent, I would mean background investigation standards and drug abuse standards. And if you saw the last video on drug abuse standards, you can see that, well, I can see, if you haven't, it certainly has changed a lot in 40 years as to what was acceptable then and what's acceptable now. So let's say you're interested in a job in federal law enforcement. Okay, you really want to go federal, which is what I wanted to do towards, I knew that I wanted to do that when I was in college. What steps should you take now? Okay, first of all, keep that goal in mind, that you want to go federal. Okay, if your goal is to get in the FBI as a graduate with a bachelor's degree, your chances of doing that with that alone are not very good. I've got a number of videos on the FBI, how to get in the FBI, what the qualifications are and what they're looking for. And if all you have is a bachelor's degree, your chances of getting hired right out of college, I would say, are not good. And the reason for this, unless you have a degree, let's say, in computer science, okay, or you speak Farsi or Arabic, if you have some sort of skill that they really need, okay, but I don't want to sound negative, but criminal justice grads are a dime a dozen. I'm sorry to put it that way. I mean, I am one, so I can just tell you that. I mean, that they're not really going to be looking to hire you. And secondly, the FBI never really was an entry-level position. The FBI, the minimum age to get hired is 23. More likely, you're going to be 29 or 30. That's the average agent in the FBI Academy. I live not far from the FBI Academy. It's on Quantico Marine Base. And I've seen the FBI agents in training, and they're older. The applicants are older than they would be at a police department. So let's say you want to go with DEA, ICE, ATF, U.S. Marshals. Those all have entry-level pay at the GS-7 level. They are all special agent positions. So if you are college senior college, near coming your graduation from college, and you have a 2.9 GPA or higher overall, you will qualify to get your foot in the door for testing for these agencies. Now, does that mean that they will hire you? Maybe not. It means you're eligible to apply. Your application will not be rejected summarily. You'll be tested, but they still have the opportunity to choose who they want to take, unless you're a preference eligible. As I talked about in the military service, if you're a veteran, well, then you have an expeditionary medal, a campaign medal. They have to take you. Okay. But my advice is go ahead and apply for every agency that is open and that you want to apply for. Now, right now, the FBI is open, the DEA is open. So those are two special agent positions that are currently open. Okay. What about other federal agencies? Well, the Border Patrol is always open and hiring. Customs and Border Protection is hiring in limited locations. The U.S. Secret Service Uniform Division is hiring, as is the United States Capitol Police. Those would be fairly easy jobs, I would think, to get if you are a college graduate, again, with a good academic record and no drug use or limited, you're eligible for security clearance, you're suitable for employment. Now, the other option, you've got a couple of options. The other would be to apply to state and local law enforcement, and the other would be to enter the military. Now, which should you take? Well, it's not either or. You can apply to multiple agencies. My advice is apply to as many agencies as you can. Apply to the agency you really want. Apply to an agency that's in the federal government that you will take as a transition stepping stone. Apply to state and local, that you might want to use as a stepping stone. Whatever you do, the more options you have, the more options you have. That's what I'm trying to say. And if you don't have any options, then you don't really have any choices. But if you have 3 job offers, well, then you get to pick and choose which one you want to do. If you just have 1 job offer because you only applied to 1 agency, well, that's pretty easy to figure out, right? Will they hold it against me that I'm applying for multiple agencies? No. Most people wanting law enforcement jobs apply for multiple agencies. And if they bring it up, you simply say, hey, offer me a job today? Oh, no, we can't do that. We got to take you through the background and polygraph. Okay, well, that's what they said too. And I'm looking for a job. I'm unemployed, They understand that. Okay, they understand that. So if you are going federal, what is the benefit from taking a position in a federal agency vis-a-vis a state and local agency? Let's say you have a job offer with the Capitol Police, a job offer with the Border Patrol, and a job offer with I'm just making this up, the Atlanta Police Department. Okay, what should you take? It depends, but if you are going federal to federal, okay, if you want to go federal, let's say you want to join the DEA or FBI, you really want to do this, okay? My advice is to go federal, and here's why. Number one, once you're in the federal system, you're in a covered position. What does that mean? Well, the Federal Employee Retirement System gives federal law enforcement officers, firefighters, and air traffic controllers, they're in what's called a covered retirement system. That means you get extra retirement as opposed to just your average federal employee. And your foot is in the door, and any time that you earn in those agencies counts toward your retirement. Now, in the federal government, you can retire at 20 years at age 50 or 25 years regardless of age. So let's say you did 10 years in the Border Patrol. You got hired when you're 22, and in 32 you went to DEA. Well, do you have to do 20 years in DEA? No. You've already got your 10 years in the Border Patrol. That counts. You don't just get your TSP, your Thrift Savings Plan money. Your retirement time transfers with you. Okay, so really, if you were looking to retire after 25 years and you started off at age 22 in the Border Patrol, okay, you could retire when you're 47. Okay, so you would come on at age 32. You could retire from DEA at age 47. and your retirement is based on your high three. So you'd probably make GS-14 before you retire, and there you go. What other benefits are there? You don't take a pay cut when you go from federal to federal. So let's say you were a GS-12 in the Border Patrol and DEA will take you on as a GS-9. That's a downgrade, but it's not a pay cut. And the reason it's not a pay cut is in the federal system, you have grade and steps, okay? So you can be a grade 7 step, whatever. It's every couple years you would get a step increase. But what they do simply is if you're downgraded, let's say you were a 12 and they're going to put you down to a 9, they move you to a 9 step 10 or whatever, which is the same pay that you were getting as a GS-12. So you don't lose a dime. That's the point. You will not lose a dime in pay going federal to federal. Okay? The third thing, this is a huge benefit, They will pay your move, okay, because you're a continuous federal employee. It matters not that you were in another agency. You're a federal employee going from one agency to another. So this is your second federal move. So let's say you're going from McAllen, Texas, and you're hired by the DEA and they want you to work in Washington, D.C. The government not only pays for your movement of your household goods, they buy your house, they give you a house hunting trip, and they give you temporary quarters, 90 days. That benefit is worth between $150,000 to $200,000. Now, if you are a new federal employee and you're hired, let's say in Atlanta, as a DEA agent, and they send you to New York City, you got to pay your own move, okay? Because you're not a federal employee. So that is something. The same thing applies to your retirement. You could certainly take your 401k if you're an Atlanta police officer and take it to, and just roll it over, but you don't get your 10 years that you were an Atlanta police officer. The federal government does not credit you with that time. You start over at day one. So that's something to really think about. And here's what I've noticed. The longer you're with a state and local agency, the longer you're with a state and local agency. Okay? The less likely it is you're going to leave. And here's why. Number one, you have time invested for retirement. Number two, you've set down roots in your community. You have a house and children, and you don't want to move. Okay? So I supervised many task forces, one in El Paso, two in the DC area, and we had state and local officers who are deputized and receive DEA task force credentials. Now, they are local police officers, and the government paid their overtime and provided them with a car. And they have the same arrest authority as a DEA agent. Now, why don't they just become DEA agents? Because they would have to leave their department, and they can't leave their department. The reason they can't leave their department is they have too much time invested in there. They may hate their department. They may dislike it intensely, but they can't leave, okay? Because if you got 10 or 15 years invested, that's not realistic that you're going to walk away from that and start all over somewhere else, okay? So that is certainly a huge consideration, okay? Your background and polygraph. If you are a federal employee, it's likely to be accepted by the agency that you're going to, with the one exception being the FBI. So if you are federal, I'm speaking only federal, and you passed your background and your polygraph, obviously, because you're working there in the Secret Service Uniform Division, now you want to go to DEA, they don't have to go through this whole rigmarole with your background. They just have to update it, and the polygraph should be good. It should be good. It shouldn't be a problem, because you've already had a polygraph to join the Secret Service, okay? They might polygraph you again, but I can't imagine that it would be a problem, okay? But the background is done, it's much quicker because the background has already been done, and they have to reinvestigate you every 5 years in the federal government. If you're in the Capitol Police and you want to go over to DEA, okay, you've already had a background and a polygraph, a federal background and a polygraph. Federal backgrounds are done by the Office of Personnel Management, with the exception of the FBI, which does its own, but they're all the same pretty much, and the polygraphs are pretty much all the same. So that will transfer, pretty easily over to another federal agency. What are some of the downsides going one federal agency to another? Well, you got to go through their academy. So if you're going to the DEA, ICE, ATF, Marshals, you're going to have to go through their training, despite the fact that you were a Border Patrol, Customs, Border Protection officer, you name it, Secret Service uniform, whatever you were, you're going to have to go through their training. What is the other downside? And you're probably going to have to relocate, but again, the government is going to pay 100% of your relocation. Now let's look at the other option. Let's say you go state and local. Okay, let's say you're in my state, the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's very easy right now to get hired as a state and local police officer in Virginia. Number one, you can pay your way to the police academy. You can pay your own way, which is $5,000 to go to the Rappahannock Regional Criminal Justice Academy. Then you get state certified. You can just go to any police department in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they're likely to take you, particularly if you have a college degree and a clean background. The only exception is the Virginia State Police. They have their own academy, and it's like boot camp, and they're going to do what they're going to do. But every other agency, you could simply go to that with your state certification. Now, again, the same thing applies. Let's say I took a job with the Stafford County Sheriff's Department, which is the Sheriff's Department here in Stafford County, Virginia. The pay is about $50,000 a year. It really is not that great. For good pay in state and local, I think you have to go to major metropolitan areas or wealthy suburbs that pay a lot. This area, a lot of our police officers, deputy sheriffs are retired enlisted military. Okay? So they already have an income in addition to what they're getting. Secondly, when you transfer from one agency to another, yes, with your state certification you can, but you start over with your retirement, and you may start over with the pay scale. So that is another issue. Okay, so there's pros and cons in everything. Now, if you're trying to go from state and local to federal, again, the problems that I outlined are the problems that you've got. Now, I went from state and local to federal, but I only had a year in state and local. The job was crummy as far as I'm concerned, working in jail in midnight. I mean, it's not a great job, right? And I didn't own a house. I didn't have anything. There was nothing stopping me from moving to Miami. Matter of fact, when my wife and I moved to Miami, we bought a car. We threw all our junk in a car and drove to Miami and found a furnished apartment. So it was very easy. But then we were 26 years old, If I had to do it now and they weren't going to pay for the way, forget it, I mean, so that's it. I mean, those are the benefits. If you're Secret Service Uniform Division, you want to become Secret Service plainclothes, I think that's pretty easy. I think that's a regular transition. I don't think you'll have a hard time doing that. It would be a little bit harder, if you're going state and local and trying to become a Secret Service agent than if you were already in their system, already in their agency, and you're doing a good job, my opinion. Okay. Certainly, if you're in Customs Border Protection and you want to go to ICE, I don't think that's a huge problem. I don't think it is a huge problem. It's still under that same umbrella, immigration and customs enforcement, and it would seem to be a natural progression. So again, remember this. The longer you're in state and local, the less likely you are to leave that department because you have too much time invested. So hopefully, if you find a department, make sure it's one you want to stay with if you're going to stay with them. Federal, there's much more better chances of moving around. People always move up, and I don't like to say up and down, but I know several DEA agents who went to the FBI. I never knew any FBI agents who went to the DEA. This doesn't happen. I know a lot of Border Patrol agents who went to the DEA. I never met a DEA agent who went to the Border Patrol. It just doesn't happen. Maybe it did. I just never heard of it. But I don't think it happens, okay? I hear a lot of state and local who, a huge number who went to DEA. Not too many DEA who go to state and local. So there is pros and cons in everything, okay? What is your other option? Your other option is the armed forces, okay? And that isn't a bad option, actually. As a college graduate, I would highly recommend you look at the military to get experience if you want to go federal. If you want to, as a college graduate, you'll be able to become a commissioned officer. You should have that opportunity. If they have ROTC in your college, sign up for it. If they don't have it or you're near graduation, you would look at the officer candidate programs. Each service has officer candidate programs. Okay? If you wanted to enlist, make sure you enlist for something that's going to benefit you and not them. And that isn't military police. Military police is not really going to benefit you. What will benefit you? Intelligence job with a high security clearance, foreign language skills, or if you're in one of these high speed operator jobs like SEALs or recon, or but those are very, very, don't hang your hat on that unless you're an Olympic athlete. Okay, so I would, I have a friend who did that. He went from he graduated college, enlisted in the Army for 5 years, was a translator, an Arabic translator in the 82nd Airborne, and then he went to DEA. So with his college degree, his Arabic language skills, and his high security clearance, they took him immediately. So, but again, if you're just a cook or something like that, I'm not saying it's bad being a cook in the military, but I'm saying, they're not going to consider that as much. The other benefit is you could become a preference eligible if you deploy, as this guy did. He deployed, so he became a preference eligible. They had to hire him. Preference eligible, they have to hire you. Okay, so that's important. And you might like the military and just stay there. And even if you do stay there and then go federal, even if you're 40 years old, they will give you a waiver up to the number of years. So you're 40, 41, and you've done your 20 years in the military, you can still go federal, but you have to retire definitely on your 20th anniversary. So hopefully I've brought up some things. I've gone over a lot of ground in a short period of time, some things to think about. If you have any questions, send me a message and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay? Thank you.